Hi there, welcome to the archives. I thought I'd quickly get on here and just do a follow-up to a video I did a couple of years ago. So on LinkedIn recently, I've been sharing old videos I did on fear, specifically fear over the centuries. I wanted to get on here and do another one that kind of looked at fear in the 21st century. So I'm talking about, or maybe even specifically fear in 2025. Because I find that when you're able to identify what fear looks like in this moment, when you're able to address what other people are collectively facing in terms of fear, you recognize the patterns, and that's when you're also able to recognize that it's actually something that is quite structural and systemic, because you're able to see it multiple times, not only over through the centuries, but in certain places, and repeatedly, right? So if you recall, when we're talking about fear in the 19th century, the 20th century, there was the fear of trains, right? Freud was really afraid of getting on a train. Why? Because there was a lot of train crashes that was killing people. We have similar fears still, right? Now it's Boeing. Now it's airplanes, it's aircrafts that we're afraid of. Back then it was fear of starvation and famine, right? In Ireland, they were starved. In other parts of Europe, they were living destitute lives. We still have that. There's still fear of starvation. If you're looking at places like Gaza, if you're looking at places like Sudan, if you're looking at places like Congo, East Africa, there is, droughts. Fear of starvation is real, not just in Africa, but even here in Canada, right? Food insecurity is a huge thing. I often rely on the food bank, and I'm seeing that the numbers are dwindling, and that's also part of the thing. If you squeeze people out, what do? They become desperate. What happens when you become desperate? Desperate times call for desperate measures. That's when you're probably most likely to engage in crime, turn on others, right? What does that then do? Then you're looking at incarceration, which is great for them because they're building all of these mega prisons that they need to fill up, right? So that hasn't changed. Fear of starvation and fear of famine, that has not changed. That's still very much there, right? Now it's hysteria back then, right? Women are hysterical, they're crazy, they're mad. We still have that. But as Jonathan Metzl shows us in Protest Psychosis, how schizophrenia became a black disease, we see a shift from women as schizophrenic, right? The housewife as schizophrenic, the artist, the folks who have leisure time as schizophrenics, to black men, to black women, black people, right? So that fear is still there. We're still afraid of the mad individual. Now it's not the white woman we're afraid of, it's a black man, it's a black woman, it's a black person who is read as like deviant. Again, same thing I talked about in the video of the 20th century, fear of HIV, right? Now it's fear of COVID, fear of the bird flu. In the past it was SARS and H1N1. There's still, those variants are still there. It's still that public health hysteria. What else? What are different ways that you can see how fear was mobilized in the past to how fear is mobilized now, right? The crack epidemic, it's still here. We still have fear of opioids now, right? So it's just, what I'm trying to show is fear is always productive over the years. There will always be some sort of fear that's used, whether it's created on purpose, whether it's just natural, fear of natural disasters. We're seeing that now, fear of wildfires, fear of hurricanes, right? Back then, it was the Soviets and the communists. Now it's still the communists, but it's like China. You're supposed to be afraid of Chinese people, right? And then and now, it's always been black people. Back then, it was fear of Jewish people rounding up, right? The Holocaust. We're still seeing very similar patterns now. It's Muslim folks. Concentration camps then. Now we're seeing there's detention camps. Fear of Africans has always been there, unfortunately. Now it's immigrants and asylum seekers and refugees, but there's always been a fear of Africans, right? Whether it's capturing them on their own land and bringing them over across. The fear of the Roma community, we don't often talk about the Roma community, but the Roma community has been, when the Jewish folks were getting exterminated, the Roma community was also getting exterminated then as well too. We don't talk about it, just like we don't talk about the Holocaust against Namibians, right? Yeah, so these are some of the different ways in which I'm just hoping that we can connect how fear looked back then to how it looked now. It's always been fear of the LGBT community, right? That hasn't really changed. That's still there. Now, back then, it was the Black Panthers. 21st century, it's Black Lives Matter. It's pro-Palestine liberation, right? And in all of these things, what did that fear of these bodies work to do? When you fear Jewish people, what happened? Why am I spinning? What happened? We know how that ended. When we fear black people, what happened? Right? When we fear immigrants, what happened? We're seeing that now. And so that's all I'm trying to say is just if we look at fear across, whether it was the 17th, 16th, 15th, 18th, 19th, 20th century, a lot of it looks similar as the 21st century. It's just evolved and taking form in new ways, right? And all of that fear, all of that mobilized fear gets votes, circulates money, makes people profit, brings about suffering for some, death for others, incarceration for a lot, destitution, starvation, not enough, right? It's a very scarcity mindset that's so unnecessary. I have a meeting, so I'm going to go. But that's all I wanted to share is think about what fear looks like in the 21st century, what fear looks like right now. What is fear looking like for you, for your family, for your community, for your folks? How did it look similar to what your people went through historically? How do they navigate that fear? And how could you use that same thing to kind of navigate the fear now? Okay, so until next time, in solidarity. Tomorrow is my birthday. I have a meeting. I'm late. Take care.